when it comes to longevity, there's no short-term fix. You have to think about things that are going to last decades, not months, if you want them to influence how long you're going to live.
And if you want to add 10 quality years to your life, Blue Zone's founder, Dan Buettner, has got a challenge for you. So let's start living. Hi, I'm Hilary Russo. Thanks for joining me for the Holistically Speaking podcast. I'm a certified holistic health coach and Havening Techniques practitioner, lover of great conversation, and of course, clever wordplay, holistically speaking. So welcome to an empowering place where my guests share their transformational stories of trauma to triumph through health, healing, and humor. It's the ultimate brain candy as we find out who we are, how we got that way, and what it takes to be a happy and healthy grown-up. And be kind to your mind. I'm glad you're here. Imagine adding 10 extra years to your life. And I don't just mean tacking on the numbers. I mean 10 good years, 10 happy years. And if you're lucky, maybe hitting those triple digits. If you think it's impossible and you're like, come on, Hill, 100? Don't take my word for it, because there are a number of centenarians around the world that may beg to differ with you. That is, when they have the time, because they're pretty busy living life to the fullest to prove you wrong. They live in what's called the blue zones. These are 5 areas around the world where people are living well into their 100s. And when Dan Buettner discovered the principles behind these happy and active humans thriving in their golden years, he knew there was more to be shared and more work to be done to spread the principles of the blue zones globally. And it's happening. Maybe right in your own backyard. Dan has traveled the world as a journalist. He's authored a number of best-selling books about the blue zones. And when it comes to living a healthy lifestyle, Dan practices what he preaches. You don't get to be a 3-time Guinness World Record holder by sitting on your duff. Well, unless you're a cyclist, which he is, but we'll get to that. And he joined me on the show to not only answer listeners' questions, but take a deep dive into the topic of longevity. You can bet I was all ears, and I have no doubt you will be too. So, on this episode of Holistically Speaking, Dan shares more about the 9 principles of the blue zones, including the one he believes has the most impact, and a challenge for you to add those 10 quality years, that awesome decade to your life, with his latest book that's about to hit the shelves. Plus, and for lack of a better term, Dan is quite an influencer. So much so, he may have convinced yours truly to take a powerful social media step, but you're going to have to listen to get the scoop. Okay, let's get busy living and head to the blue zones. Dan, thank you so much for being here on Holistically Speaking. It is an absolute pleasure to finally sit in the space with you and talk blue zones, talk what's going on in your life. It's been a long time coming because you're usually traveling. So catching you during the pandemic was a really smart move on my behalf, I would have to say.
I think so. No, I'm really glad, as you put it, share this space with you right now and with everybody listening. It's always considered a big honor that people take the time to hear what we have to say.
Yeah, that is for sure. And, you know, I've been following your journey for quite some time, and just knowing what you've been doing and knowing that you've been on the road so much, and you've had so many adventures in your own work as a journalist and, of course, a best-selling author or multi-best-selling author, but also just being out there on the road and like meeting people every day in every way in every culture has been such a benefit for you. And I guess that's kind of how the Blue Zones came about. So I'd love for you to share with listeners of Holistically Speaking what exactly the Blue Zones are and how you kind of got into that on that journey of the Blue Zones and the project itself.
Sure. I've been a lifelong explorer. Started my profession setting 3 world records for biking across 5 continents. And then I started a company that solved mysteries. I had a staff of scientists and archaeologists and photographers, and we scrubbed the earth to find 2 mysteries to solve every year. And we had a big online audience that followed as we solved those mysteries. And one of them we stumbled upon in the year 2000 was Okinawa. It had the longest disability-free life expectancy in the world. And I thought, now there's a good mystery, because this is a population of real people who are making it to 100 at rates 7 times greater than we are at the United States, with a fifth the rate of the cancers that kill us, a sixth the rate of heart disease, a fraction of the rate of Alzheimer's. And I said, boy, if I can crack this mystery, people will really be interested. And a few years later, after selling that company, I went to National Geographic and suggested a project that would systematically go through all the Earth census data to identify pockets where people are living the longest, and then put another team of experts on it to discern the common denominators, the correlates that seem to explain longevity no matter where you go. And we found these blue zones, incidentally. Okinawa, Japan, longest lived women. Longest lived men come from the highlands of Sardinia, the Nuoro province, about 11 times more male centenarians there. Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica. Here in the United States, it's among the Seventh-day Adventists in and around Loma Linda, California. And then Ikaria, Greece is the last one. That was the last blue zone. Identifying those places, it was part of blue zones. It was that was in 2004. Although I was just in Ikaria last month, so the research continues.
Looking to create more blue zones, right? I mean, we've been hearing about how the blue zones are those 5 places that you just mentioned, the original 5, based on those 9, the Power 9 principles. But since then, with the development of the Blue Zone Project, your goal is to find the blue zones in other areas of the world, right? Because, I mean, I think when people hear about, wow, longevity, living past 100 years old, and not just living well, living happy and healthy, living in a way where you're able to thrive into your 100s. So I think that really sparks a lot of interest, because the idea of like the fountain of youth has been around forever, right?
Well, the value proposition is the average American, our life expectancy is just over 79 right now. The capacity of the human machine living in the first world is probably 93. So we're leaving about 14 years of life on the table because of the way we're living. And blue zones are getting most of those 14 years, but they tend to be good years. You know, people say, well, I don't want to live to 100. But actually you do, because essentially the longer you've lived, the healthier you've been. So you look at a cohort of people who made it to 60, and they had about 8 or 9 years of morbidity or disability. So, you know, you find the 1,000 people who lived up to 60, and you look at their medical history, you know, they usually lived pretty rough lives and had long, slow deaths. On the other hand, the cohort of people who make it to 100, you have to have been healthy to live to 100, and they tend to die very quickly, you know, in a year or so. So 100-year-olds are making it to 100 is really something you want to strive for. If you have an average set of genes, you'll probably make it to your mid-90s, but that's a lot better than we're doing on average in the United States.
How about yourself? I mean, when you've been traveling all of these places and seeing all of these different cultures thriving and well into their hundreds and living so well, does it inspire you? I mean, being a Guinness Book World Record cyclist and just all of your travels that you've done, I mean, it can take a lot out of you personally. Is one of the reasons for wanting to find these places is for your own health and well-being as well?
You know, I have a passing interest in it. I've certainly learned. Yeah. But no, it's not as much a personal quest as it is a part of my chosen profession, which is, you know, I had an editor at National Geographic named Peter Miller. You know, after setting these records, National Geographic never, you know, assigned me stories about setting these, you know, fairly epic cycling expedition stories. After the third one, the editor said to me, you know, explorations of today, they need to add to the body of knowledge or illuminate the human experience. And the Blue Zones, I think, does that better than any other expedition I've done. And in many respects, you know, better than any expedition to the top of Everest or, you know, to some deep jungle. Because what we're doing is we're identifying geographically confirmed areas and then mining traditional wisdom that's been around hundreds of years that can be directly put to work in our daily lives. You mentioned the Blue Zone project. So most of what I've been doing for the last 11 years is building a company. We have about 200 employees who take the insights we learned in Blue Zones and apply them to American cities. So to date, about 60 cities have hired us to put Blue Zone principles to work. And in every one of those cities, we've seen the obesity rate drop, and therefore heart disease, diabetes, and cancer drops. In Fort Worth, Texas, for example, they figure using Blue Zone principles at the population levels have saved them about $250 million a year in healthcare costs. So this is sort of the holy grail of going out in the world like an explorer does and bringing back something useful. So personally, it's I live most of the Blue Zone principles in my personal life, but it wasn't a personal quest.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I want to talk about the principles, the Power 9. And I know there are a lot of questions that we got from listeners, but first I want to just run through them real quick if we can, because the wheel, looking at the circle of the Power 9, it's not like everything's equal. It looks like some might have a little bit more importance than others. So how did you come about finding the principles themselves and incorporating how important some are over some others?
Yeah, the principles are common denominators. So quickly, they don't rely on exercise to get their physical activity. Instead, they live in places where they're nudged into movement every 20 minutes or so, because every time they go to work or a friend's house or out to eat, it occasions a walk. They have gardens out back. They haven't engineered all the physical activity out of their lives with mechanical conveniences, which we've done. They suffer the same stresses that we do, but they downshift with these sacred daily rituals like prayer, meditation, ancestor veneration, taking a nap, happy hour, very powerful daily practices at lowering inflammation. They have vocabulary for purpose, so they know why they wake up in the morning, what gets them out of bed and into their day. That's worth about 8 years of life expectancy. In my book, The Blue Zone Solution, with Harvard, we did a meta-analysis. In other words, we looked at 155 dietary surveys done over the past 100 years in all 5 Blue Zones to find out exactly what centenarians ate to live to be 100. Because you want to know what a 100-year-old ate to be so old, you can't just ask him or her what they've done lately. You have to know what they've done most of their lives. So dietary surveys get at that. So we found they eat mostly a whole food, plant-based diet. The 4 pillars of every longevity diet in the world are whole grains, tubers, like sweet potatoes, nuts, and beans. And if you're eating about a cup of beans a day, it's worth about 4 extra years of life expectancy. They have strategies to keep from overeating. They tend to pre-plate their food. They tend to voice gratitude before their meals, which slows them down, better assures they don't overeat. And they tend to eat all their calories in about a 10-hour window. So they're letting their digestive system rest. They do drink a little. They put their families first. They belong to religions. Overwhelmingly, they belong to faith communities. And then finally, they're intentional about their social circles. So their friends tend to be people who reinforce healthy behaviors instead of the other way around. And so that's the power. That's the 9 common denominators right there.
Interestingly enough, it seems that looking at the wheel of the Power 9 and comparing it to, say, just in the work that I do with integrative nutrition, that you had the secondary nutrition and the primary nutrition, secondary being the food you're eating, which is important, obviously, how we nourish and fuel the body. But the primary is always like the spirituality, your home cooking, your home life, your environment. You want to crowd out that which is toxic and bring in that which is not. And community. I mean, it always comes back to community, I would imagine. And I know I think about tribe and the word tribe, how important it is to have the basis of people who are supporting you when you're struggling, when you're thriving, and just in everyday life. And I remember seeing a couple of your stories or even just pictures from the Blue Zones of just women. There was women and both men well into their 100s, like sorority, fraternity kind of compatibility and community. You could just see that they were friends for such a long time, just in the energy that they were putting out there, just even in a photo, not even in a video. And you're capturing the realism of these people who are just living and being,
If you want people to remember a health message, you don't give them scientific facts. You tell them a story. So the way we tell stories, that most journalists, when they write a story about a centenarian, they'll interview one 100-year-old, and then they'll tell the secret of that one 100-year-old as if that's the secret to longevity. It's not. The average 100-year-old no more knows how he got to be 100 than a tall man knows how he got to be tall. Our way of doing it was to find out what the population does, what the cake recipe is for the whole population, what they eat, how they socialize, where they find their purpose, how they de-stress. And then you kiss a number of frogs until you find the prince or the princess who A is 100, B has a good story, but most importantly, in telling their story, you're telling the story of the community, what the average person does. And it takes a long time to find that prince or princess. But once you find it, as you point out, it conveys the vitality. It conveys really the beauty of living 100 years the way they've lived 100 years, and the joy it can be. But most importantly, it conveys the science. And, as a journalist working for National Geographic, that's really my job.
Mm. Can you tell me how you came up with the idea of calling it a blue zone?
Well, the photographer David McLean actually suggested it. We were trying to come up with a name, but we had been in Sardinia, and there's a very clever physician working there named Gianni Pes. And Gianni had written a paper with a demographer. He spent about 5 years going through birth records and death records there and finding out where the centenarians, the 100-year-olds, live in Sardinia. And when he found one, he put a check mark on their village. And in this area called the Nuoro province, there were so many check marks denoting centenarians that it was just a blue blob on the map. And that's what he called the blue zone. And David's the one that suggested, well, why, you're going to find blue zones around the world. You find or longevity hotspots. Why don't you use the term Gianni used in Sardinia? So I expanded the term to be an international connotation of longevity, and evolved the term because it's not just geography anymore. Blue zones metabolizes also the lifestyle and the approach to longevity. And if I could just take another minute here, the approach to longevity, we're not seeking to expand, or we're not purporting to tell you that we can exceed the capacity of your machine, your human machine. Mm-hmm. What we can tell you is how to live in a way where you're likely to avoid avoidable chronic diseases like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, dementia. These are all things that foreshorten our lives. Almost all of them are completely avoidable or mostly avoidable. And the prescriptive we've distilled in Blue Zones, I believe, is the best one out there to help you avoid diseases you don't need to catch. And by the way, they're diseases that our country spends about $3.6 trillion a year trying to mop up.
Yeah, I mean, I think about some of the changes that I've seen just in my own life when I started living a more holistic way of being, and then how people see me living a certain way and wanting a piece of that. How can I live longer? And also, I mean, just my own family, my parents, my mother, my father has passed, but what can I do to help them live longer so they can create their own blue zones within their own communities, you know? And, whatever we can do to not just live long, but live well is something that is a gift. Life is a gift. So the fact that you're doing that, you're putting this out there, and you had the blue zones that came out originally, and then you have all these other books that have been just powerful tools for people to incorporate into their lives. And you have the Blue Zone Kitchen, which how is it making a cookbook? I'm curious about that.
The idea was to create kind of a combination between a book, food anthropology, coffee table book, beauty, but also science reporting. And to your point, it was the best-selling book I've ever written. Sold about 500,000 copies so far, and it was number one on both the New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller list. And the irony is, I kind of did it as a fun project, and it was way easier than writing the other books. But people tend to like to eat, and if you show them how to eat delicious food that can help them live to be 100, it seems to be a winning combination.
Well, I think a lot of it also, and I share this a lot with my students. I'm also a college professor of journalism, and I'm always telling them, we live in a global village now, right? We live in a global village, and we have the ability to tap into and touch, move, and inspire people, and be touched, move, and inspired by people all over the world now, because it's not grabbing an encyclopedia or turning on the TV for just 30 minutes a day watching the news. At the click of a finger, a click of a button, we can be anywhere we want to be. So I would imagine a lot of it has to do with being intrigued by other cultures, being able to travel to other areas. People are taking adventures and learning about cultures. So when you're putting this into a book like The Blue Zones Kitchen, you're bringing that culture back, and people are able to, no pun intended, taste the flavors of all of these cultures out there, where people are actually it's not just cultural food, it's cultural food that can do something positive for your mind, body, and spirit. So that might be part of the reason why it's a bestseller too.
Very well put, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I find it's fascinating to look at different cultures and their cooking and try different things and be exploratory and adventurous. But when I know that it's doing something good for my body and my mind and my spirit and my emotional state, why wouldn't I want to put it in my collection? So that's great.
Just to riff off of that a little bit, along with Blue Zone Kitchen, I wrote an article for National Geographic on diets of longevity, and did a really deep dive. And what's interesting is what came out of that research. We tend to spend a lot of time obsessing about proteins and carbohydrates and fats and how much we should have of each and how much meat, vegan or gluten-free. The big finding in that article was that we all have a microbiome that weighs between 6 and 8 pounds. So, in a way, it's our biggest organ, and it's composed of about 100 trillion bacteria. Those bacteria, when they're fed properly, produce something called short-chain fatty acids, which leach into our bloodstream and regulate inflammation. Chronic inflammation is at the root of every major age-related disease. They fine-tune our immune system so we can better fight off things like the coronavirus. They govern our mood. They actually make us happy. Those 100 trillion cells only eat, the good ones anyway, only consume one thing. It's not fat, it's not protein, it's not carbohydrates, it's fiber. And the average standard American diet is almost devoid of fiber. Hamburgers, French fries, pizzas, donuts, no fiber in any of that. When you starve your microbiome, those little bacteria start turning on the mucous membrane in your lower intestine, and make it permeable. So your waste can start to leak into your bloodstream and create all kinds of inflammation. So it turns out that the biggest finding, I think, when it comes to longevity is eating fiber. And that's not only keeping you healthy, inflammation in check, it's making your mood better. So quite literally, you can eat for happiness by eating the right foods.
Eat for happiness. That sounds like a good idea. I don't mind that. Yeah. Well, we hear so much about the different kinds of diets and lifestyles and things we should try. And there's diets that say don't do the legumes, and there's diets that say don't drink the alcohol, and there's programs that say cut all the fat out. And I think we're in this information overload world, especially America, especially this country.
Much of it refutes itself.
Yeah. And when you look at these places that you visited and these places that are now considered blue zones, people aren't following that kind of protocol. And I think we also stress ourselves out. And that was a couple of questions we got from people about stress. We stress ourselves out trying to fit into this trend or what's right or what's working. And it's bio-individuality. You do what makes you feel well, but there's certain practices, but you're going to see it from people like the ones in the blue zones, obviously are doing something right. So I think we add a lot of stress to ourselves, especially with social media, everything out there that's, the influencers are promoting this, promoting that. And we just get into a state of like,
aren't we influencers?
I think we are, but we're content creators. We're content creators.
Yeah, that's better.
And storytellers. Dan, I hate the word influencer. I got to be honest. I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of that word because
influencees.
Yes. Yeah. I like that. I don't mind that. We can influence each other.
I like that.
So yeah, I think that's what it's all about, is being in the space where we are touching and moving, inspiring each other. And from that, you create your tribe. And from that, your tribe, and let me touch on something else, going back to that thought that just came to my mind. I think I watched a Today Show interview with you. It might have been Today's Show, or you might have said it a couple of times, where you talked about the people that are around you, the 3 core people that are around you. If they wind up being obese, that's not helping you with your own health and wellness. If they wind up being fit and in shape, that's the kind of tribe you're building around you. Do you want to elaborate on that? Because I felt like I'd like you to touch on that.
Well, this is actually Nicholas Christakis' work. He's at Yale right now, but he was at Harvard when he did this. But he measured the contagious nature of friends. And it turns out your friends' health habits are measurably contagious. So if your 3 best friends are unhealthy and obese, there's a 155% better chance that you'll be overweight. So in blue zones, when you look at their social networks, their friends tend to be the ones whose idea of recreation is walking or gardening. They tend to eat a plant-based diet, like all blue zones. They tend to really care about their friends. There's this social construct in Okinawa known as the moai. It's kind of a committed social circle. When you're a little kid, you commit to 4 or 5 other 5-year-olds, and for the rest of your life, they have your back and you have theirs. And that turns out to be a powerful idea. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation uses the following question to determine loneliness. Do you have 3 good friends you can count on a bad day and with whom you can have a meaningful conversation? If you say no to that, it shaves about 8 years off of your life expectancy. So my point being, one of the best things you can do to add quality, happy years to your life is carefully create a social circle around yourself. And these are people, you want people whose idea of recreation is something active or something that pushes us to keep our brains hungry and fit. Friends who you can have a meaningful conversation with, not just exchanging gossip or sports scores or Hollywood trivia. And it's also not a bad idea to have a friend or two who is vegan or vegetarian, because they're going to teach you not only how to eat plant-based food, but how to like it, how to find the food that you enjoy that's plant-based. And right there, that's worth about 6 years of life expectancy over being, eating a standard American diet. And just a postscript to that, if your three best friends' idea of fun is sitting around a barbecue eating wieners and then watching TV all night, guess what you're probably going to be eating and doing? So my point being is friends have a huge influence, and more importantly, friends are long-term adventures. And when it comes to longevity, there's no short-term fix. You have to think about things that are going to last decades, not months, if you want them to influence how long you're going to live.
Which kind of goes back to those pictures I was talking about of those centenarians. And I have the visual in my head of both the men in the line, and it's just such a beautiful picture, and then the women together doing their thing. And I'm like, I want to be that. I want my girls, I want my sisterhood around me. And it's such a feeling of knowing that you're embraced and you're supported, I get it. Actually, funny story about that. I am probably one of those. Mainly, I was a vegetarian for a number of years. I don't like to label myself something, but when I wasn't eating meat, I remember going to a Thanksgiving, and I made I made the turkey out of the vegetable crudité plate. And I said, I brought the turkey. And it was kind of a running joke because people liked that I brought the healthier option rather than all the other stuff that's on the table as an appetizer. And then they learn from you because you find humor in the kind of healing and the health that we do, right? It's not shoving it down people's throats. You gotta introduce people in a humorous and a fun way and let them try it out for themselves. So I like that you touch on that. So before we go into the Blue Zone Challenge, because I know we're going to talk about that, I just want to say real quick, I want to say thank you to Squadcast for providing the space for me to talk with Dan Buettner. He's the founder of the Blue Zones, and we are here talking about everything Blue Zones. And I just want to let listeners know, if you find this conversation interesting on Holistically Speaking, share it with just one other person. Let them know that you are interested and you are touched by this and you want to pay it forward, because that's really what good health is all about. So Dan, let's get into the Blue Zone Challenge. Lay it on me. December 7th, coming out. Go for it.
Yeah, so the organizing principle for Blue Zones, people who are living a long time, it's never because they have more discipline or more responsibility or more self-control or any of the other things that drive diets or exercise programs. They just live their lives. And the reason they live in a long time is because they live in environments where the healthy choice is the easy choice. The right foods, the whole plant-based foods are cheapest, most accessible, and all the most delicious recipes are the ones that are easiest for them to access. They live in places where they're nudged into movement every 20 minutes. The option to be all by yourself in a room playing with your device all day doesn't exist because somebody's going to be rapping at your door to come out. And they live with purpose. So the Blue Zone Challenge takes this general concept. If you want to live longer, don't try to change your mind, change your surroundings. And it deploys about 30 evidence-based nudges and defaults that you can put to, you make the effort right now during this 4-week challenge and you can forget about it. There'll be long-term influences to make your mindless choices the healthy choice. And this is something we've deployed in 60 American cities, but we customize this really for individuals.
And it comes out December 7th. And is this a project that you feel like when you're writing all of these other books and putting your thoughts into action, that you knew you wanted to do this kind of a challenge for those who have been interested in the Blue Zones? I mean, where did this concept come about? Because I just feel like you're constantly writing anyway.
Yeah, well, the first book is more conceptual, like how we found these Blue Zones and the general things we learned. And then I started this company that works with entire cities, and people kind of crave a prescriptive. They want to know exactly what to do. So as I spend more time with this, I realized that there's a hunger for people to put it to work in their lives. So this book is really the first one that's aimed at how to. It's 4 weeks, tells you exactly what you do each week to set up your life to live an extra 10 years. And they should be good years. And it's all evidence-based. It's published by National Geographic. It's available for pre-order on Amazon. It was the #1 new release, even first day hit Amazon. So it's already, I think, being really well received. And it wasn't the hardest book to write, quite honestly, but it was maybe the most fun.
Well, I love that you're giving people tools to do something because, like you said, the first book was kind of a run through of what the blue zones were. You've got the Kitchen America book, which we've talked about, and then numerous other publications that you put out there, and just your writing in general. So, giving people something that's in their own hands that they can try on their own, and not just the recipes from a cookbook or not a cookbook. What do you want to call it if you don't want to call it a cookbook?
You can call it a cookbook.
Okay. Well, we know it's a collaborative cookbook
Yeah.
of influencers all
It's
over the
Blue Zone
world.
Kitchen. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
So, I mean, we're seeing that a lot lately, especially online, that people are creating these 3-week courses, 4-week courses, 10-week courses, whatever challenges.
Yeah, it's the attention span of Americans. I've learned a long time ago. I'm actually spending more time on Instagram. I've written 10 books and 5 of them were New York Times bestsellers. But I realized, with a good Instagram account, well managed, you can get more influence out. That's the way people are consuming stories and information today. And rather than fighting it and saying, I'm going to keep writing books. My first book, Blue Zones, the first big book, the original Blue Zone book, it took me 5 years to write that. And I remember printing it out and sending it to my editor at National Geographic. And I was so excited. And weeks went by and finally I called him up and I said, did you get the book? He said, yeah, I got it. In fact, I read it. And I was so excited. I said, what'd you think? He said, I loved it. In fact, I love it so much, I can't wait until I see the second draft. So I thought here after 5 years, I have the opus. And that was just the first of 6 drafts. And, that foundational research is I still stand on that right now. I still, dine out on it, so to speak. But what America wants to consume right now isn't a thick treatise. They want well-researched information delivered visually, quick read, and quickly they can put it to work in their lives. And rather than fighting that, I just go along with it. I'm more successful than ever, it seems.
Not a bad thing. Okay, so let me ask you this: if you're embracing Instagram, are you embracing Reels and TikTok and the influencer stuff?
Yeah, I started TikTok about a month ago. And I already have like 33,000 followers. I just sit in front of a microphone and talk for a minute and then post it. Talk for a minute and more. And I don't mind doing it. And I have anybody who tells you they love to write, you can be pretty sure they're not a writer. I hate that sitting in front of an empty screen and having to write every day. It's hard work. Sit in front of a Instagram audience is easy and it's fun and it's direct interactivity and I don't pay too much attention to the trolls, but I think if you approach it as not an ego thing but as a fun way to disseminate your ideas, it can be roll with it. It's the way the world's going. Yeah,
I've been warming up to the idea of TikTok. I've been resisting, and I know that there's content that's good to share.
You'd be a TikTok sensation.
I'm so glad we're recording this.
No, but half the stuff that just came out of your mouth unconsciously in this interview, it's like perfect for TikTok. It's like you have so much wisdom and experience and you have this big mind that synthesizes it and just the sort of quotes that come out of your brain are perfect. Yes, more people should hear it.
I think Dan Buettner just basically pushed me over the edge. Listeners, I will be creating a TikTok. I've been
Yeah.
resi I've been resisting for so long because I'm like, "Oh my god, another social media outlet that I have to manage," you know? But you're right. If we use it for good and when we have something
You
to
can let
say,
your
our
MySpace
value.
account go. Yeah, and your AOL account, and then take
Right.
on
Am I
TikTok.
dial-up? That's
Yeah.
amazing, I love that. MySpace. Whatever happened to MySpace? Wah, wah. Poor MySpace. That's so great. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for saying that. That means so much to me. But, so I love we got the book coming out or the book coming out December 7th. This is the Blue Zone Challenge, 4 weeks to kind of implement the Blue Zones and take 10 years off your life. Hello. That sounds
And no,
amazing.
add 10 years.
Add
Add
to
10 years. We wanna go
I
the other way.
mean, you sure you want me to do TikTok?
Yeah.
That's what
To
I
take
meant.
10 years off your life is, do the nightclub here in Miami nightclub scene in Miami. That'll take 10 years off your life.
Right,
But you
right.
have
Hit
fun doing
the
it.
either way. Yes, add 10 years to your life. Thank you for, correcting me on that one. So that's coming out December 7th. Highly encourage you to get on the pre-order, and, if not, great gift for the holidays, great gift going into the new year.
It's the gift, quite literally the gift of life.
It is the gift of life, and, like, you can start it now or you can start it the minute, to turn over this new year and add 10 years to your life, not take away 10 years.
There you
Take
go.
away bad 10 years, add 10 good years. That's what I meant. So, before we go, what I would love to do well, first, I have one question for you. Favorite place you've ever visited in all your travels?
In the middle of the Sahara Desert, there's a place called Tamanrasset. It's at the southern terminus of the Trans-Saharan Highway, and it's in the people don't realize this, but the tallest mountains in Africa are in the Sahara. They're called the Hogar Mountains. And Tamanrasset is a Tuareg town. These Tuaregs are these stately blue men who ride camels and carry these big Klingon swords. And it's the most exotically wild and wonderful and dangerous and tough place that you'll ever see. And that's my favorite.
When was that? What part of your life were you in
Uh,
when you actually
when I biked across Africa, 1993.
just biked across Africa? Whatever. Sure.
It
Okay. And,
was downhill.
just downhill. You're funny. You're a funny guy. The other question I had for you is there a principle of the Power Nine that might be your favorite? Oh my goodness. And I have people that actually added questions. See, this became such a nice conversation. I haven't added that yet. So any of the 9 principles that tends to be your favorite?
My favorite is the last one. It's creating your immediate social circle or your moai. I think it's the most
Mm,
important thing, and probably you never hear about it from marketers because you can't make any money off it like you can these bullshit supplements and superfoods.
mhm.
But it is the lasting and most measurably powerful thing you can do to add years to your life and enjoy the journey. Those 3 or 4
Great.
people, choose them carefully, invest in them, spend time with them, and reap the benefits.
Love that. So if you will do me the honor of answering a couple questions from our listeners real quick that submitted early. And this one comes from Christine in New Jersey. And she said, of the 9 principles, do you think 1 or 2 contribute more than others? And I guess that would maybe go into what you just said. Maybe not just necessarily your favorite, but are there 1 or 2 that contribute more than others as far as
Yeah,
you found that had the most impact?
well, I think eating a whole food plant-based diet with meat fewer than 5 times a month is probably worth 6 years of extra life expectancy. And also knowing your sense of purpose, knowing why you wake up in the morning, it's probably worth
Mm,
6 or 7 extra years of life expectancy. So those 2, I would say.
I like that. Great. Thanks, Christine. And Michelle in Ireland. Hey, how you doing? Love that. Love when I get these people that are international. Always looking for new ways to feel younger. Do you see a difference between feeling and looking younger? That's a very interesting question. Or would you rather feel or look?
Depends if I'm going out. If I'm staying home,
to,
I'd rather.
to, to South Beach, downtown Miami?
Yeah, yeah. I go out to the beach there. I want to look younger. But if I'm in my
I
place,
gotcha.
um, well, you know, I'm not a huge fan of the cosmetic surgery industry, but I've seen some research that shows that people who really take care of themselves, with whatever intervention, actually live longer. So there's an argument, I think, to doing what you need to do to your face to feel good about it. I think if you look good, you tend to be more active. You tend to be more socially engaged as opposed to if you feel like you look frumpy, you might be more likely to be isolated. So, yes, go ahead and get that Botox if you want.
Oh, okay. Michelle, you heard it here. Find the best place in Ireland and go for it. All right. This one actually came from my my musician for Holistically Speaking, Lipbone Redding. He's amazing. Lipbone lives in North Carolina, but he travels the world as a musician. And he said, what role does stress or lack thereof play in living a long life? Love that.
Well, pretty significant. So every time you're worried or in a hurry or angry or stressed in general, it triggers the inflammatory response, that feeling of clenched teeth or caged animal feeling. That's super bad for you. It releases cortisol. It wreaks havoc on your arteries, your heart, shrinks your brain, wrinkles your skin. And I think a lot of Americans are doing jobs they hate. They drive through traffic to get to work and back. They're under pressure to get their kids dinner and to soccer practice or whatever it is. As my mother puts it, we tend to put 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. And the more we do that, the more inflammation our body have to grapple with, and the faster we're going to age. So it's very hard to completely escape stress, but the best way to do it, I believe, is change your environment. If you're stressed out at your job, you should quit your job. If you're stressed out by the people you hang out with, you should find new friends. If you're stressed out because you live in a part of America where it's constant traffic and noise and longevity is your aim, you should move.
Yeah. And look, stress is common. I mean, we live in the fight or flight area of our brains. You have the dorsal and ventral. We're really in that yellow area a good majority of the time. We'd like to be more in the green, but our goal is to stay out of the red, right? So being comfortable in the uncomfortable and finding ways to deal with the stress, is really important. I mean, that's how I love to support my clients mainly. It's just get them in the place of joy or finding that nice even place where you can kind of smooth sail, like biking the Sahara, So I like that. That's a great share. So thanks for sharing that, Lipbone. All right, finally, let's do a little game real quick. I love doing this word association game. I write down just one word. I write them as we go. This isn't pre-planned. And I just want you to throw out the first word that comes to mind in my rapid fire, holistically speaking awesomeness. You ready to go?
Ready?
All right. Vitality.
Beans.
Culture.
Good food.
Cycling.
Shimano.
Okay. Might have to have a question about that one after. Centenarian.
Sardinia.
Longevity.
Beans.
Tribe.
True friend.
Friendship.
Love.
Blue.
Zone.
Good. Love it. Can you go back to that one word you said that I have no idea what you said?
Shimano. That's my favorite kind of bike.
Oh, okay.
Bike gear. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, and I don't even know how to write that. It's like making up words here. Great. So how long have you been a cyclist?
50 years.
Wow. Amazing. Awesome. Well, Dan, this has been such a pleasure. I want to mention again, we're talking with Dan Buettner. He is the founder of the Blue Zones. He has the Blue Zone Challenge coming out December 7th. Highly recommend it. That book and many more, and following him on Instagram because he's a complete influencer. And and he's going to be sharing. Yes, I know. I had to go there. And I just want to say thank you, but I want to hold space for you to just share a final thought with Holistically Speaking listeners, if you will do us the honor.
I probably triggered a bunch of questions. If anybody has questions, if you direct message me at Dan Buettner, I actually answer them. So anything coming up. But, I would say that the two biggest things you can do to add good years to your life is curate that immediate social network and eat more beans. And in Sardinia, when people pass each other on the street, instead of saying hello, they say "Akentanos," which in the Sardinian dialect means "I'll see you when you're 100." So my final salute is "Akentanos."
I love that. The Italian in me loves that. I might have to start using that. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I'll see you hopefully before we're at 100, but I love that. And it has been such a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for sharing time with my listeners, with me, and just being a wealth of information and sharing ways that we can live powerfully well past the double digits.
I love you. Thank you very much. I'm sending you a telephonic hug.
Yes. From one TikTok influencer to another.
That's right.
Thank you, Dan.
All right.
Great.
Thank you very much.
If you want to learn more about Dan, the Blue Zones, and the Blue Zones Challenge, a 4-week plan for a longer, better life, just visit Dan's website at danbuettner.com. And you heard it here first, Dan and I are influencer buddies, so be sure to follow Dan on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Dan Buettner. Love his videos, love his content, no doubt you will too. And while you're at it, if you haven't connected with me already on social media, do so at Hilary Russo. And yes, I am taking the plunge. That includes TikTok too. How can I possibly say no to Dan? More importantly, how can I let all of you down? There's brain candy to be shared, folks, so I'm on a mission to do so. And speaking of brain candy, if you want to learn more about havening techniques and how I can support you on your holistic journey to be kind to your mind, set up a discovery call with me and let's make some magic. You can find the link at hilaryrusso.com/havening. And if this episode touched, moved, and inspired you in any way, consider passing it along. It could not only impact someone else's life, but yours as well. Remember, there's 10 years on the line. That's Blue Zone's logic in action. You can also subscribe on any podcast platform. And if you love what we're doing here, leave a rating and a review. I read all of them and appreciate the good vibes you share. Holistically Speaking is produced by Alan Seals with music by Lipbone Redding and recorded on Squadcast. Thanks for listening. And on that note, get busy living. Be kind to your mind, and don't forget to laugh.